Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Happy feast day to all. And today's gospel reading, which we'll get to in a minute, it's brief but very powerful. And it's how really we as individuals, but also how churches should behave if we're paying attention to it. Before I get to that, though, I want to talk, and I have this up, I don't think I've ever put this up before, but to remind us through the whole liturgy of the protection of the Mother of God, the protecting veil, which stands above us. And I want you to understand that as members of this church, that her protecting veil also stands above you. She's your patroness. That protecting veil is above you, not just when you're in this building, but as members of this church. When you walk abroad, when you're at work, when you're at home, when you're in the store, her protecting veil is over you. And I want you to remember that. And so I put this up here just so it gets ingrained in your mind. That her veil is above you at all times as you walk abroad. So, back to our reading today. And as you want people to do to you, you also do to them likewise. And just as you want people to do to you, do also to them likewise. But if you love only those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend only to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners who receive as much back. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, inheriting children of the Most High, sons in Old English. For he is kind to the unthankful and the evil. Therefore be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. That's what we're called to. We're called to nothing less than sainthood, for nothing unholy shall enter into God's kingdom. So, this is a very important lesson to learn. And several years back, in fact in 2016, was when I believe in 2015, but I think it was officially at the general meeting, 2016, we decided to finally start operating fully as a church, biblically. And to set aside all the things that made us like other non-profits, doing fundraisers and this and that and the other thing, and start acting biblically. And this was really a beautiful turning point for us. In years past, we had problems. The kitchen, we had just rivalries year after year after year, and people being offended because someone didn't stay for their lunch. We collected for the lunches, and Lord have mercy, was it miserable. The parish was always in turmoil. And finally, thank God, we said no more collecting for lunches. And guess what? That worked. And that was the beginning of our realization of no more nickel and diming. If this parish won't survive on stewardship, then it won't survive, because that's what Christ tells us to do. Not to have this and that sort of fundraisers, but to give as proper. And that lunches would be a work of the heart, or any fellowship hour. It didn't have to be a lunch. which, by the way, the parish council at its next meeting will be discussing how we can open up fellowship again. But I don't want to get off track here. So, now, and this is another important thing, that if you love only those who love you, what credit is that to you? And you heard in the older English, in the King James, what thank have you? So that's the actual meaning of the word thanks, right? Today, one thing that drives me absolutely insane is that people equate the word appreciate to the word thank. It's actually not, they're not synonyms. I know they are in the most modern versions, like in dictionary.com, I understand, right? But I'm talking in actual, Webster dictionaries, there's a distinction between the two words. To appreciate means you value something. But to thank is actually a payment, a credit of something that's owed, right? So you owe something, and what you can give right now is thanks. And so we saw that in today's reading. And so this is what also always drove me crazy, anyway, we won't get into that. But anyway, I'll tell you, years ago, and it is obviously my job as a priest is to be your teacher, but there are some times that you teach me, and you teach me about what it means to be Christian. So, sometimes you send me into a deep biblical study to find out what we should be doing. Wait a minute, So years ago, I gave out all these awards and certificates and gifts to those who volunteered as thanks for doing things. And at that time, 2 people, Pani Bira Yuhaz, and also Subdeacon John, God rest his soul, recently several days ago. But of course he was a little more quiet about it. Vera was a little more upfront. And also Maggie Maidens. They both came to me, and all 3 of them came to me, and basically scolded me, Vera being the first one to speak. With all due respect, Father, you should not be thanking us or awarding us for doing things for the church. And she actually said, were you not paying attention to the reading from last week? So, and the reading from that past week was precisely about, it wasn't this one, but it was from the one from Luke 17, where we shouldn't, when we're doing what the Lord commands, we shouldn't be expecting thanks back, right? And I'm like, this is terrible. Apparently I wasn't. Or at least I wasn't paying attention to that part of the reading, right? And so Maggie also gave me the what for it. But anyway, we freely do them for God, is what she said as she continued. We're glad to do it, and everyone should be doing things for the church anyway. We're freely doing them for God. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? And it reminded me of when one of our soldiers told me he wished that people would stop thanking him on Memorial Day and Veterans Day because he was doing his duty. And I didn't say anything in return, but I just thought that was beautifully biblical. And that happened years after this incident. But after I started focusing more on passages such like that. And then another person said, we're not a volunteer organization like the Kiwanis Club, or we're the Church of Christ. And another person said, doesn't Christ say that we do things for God, that we're not to look for thanks, but rather to say we're only doing our duty? When you give us prizes and rewards, you are doing a disservice and tempting us to do our duty only if we get rewarded with thanks and praise. I'm not going to say who that was, but because I'm not sure if he'd appreciate that. But in any case, that was pretty. I know that sounds, it's disrespectful towards a priest, but I actually appreciate that stuff. I really do. It might have been a little even more in my face, but I think I needed to hear it. And of course, the passage is from Luke 17. Will any of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep say to him when he has come to the field, "Come at once and recline at table"? Will he not rather say to him, "Prepare supper for me and dress properly and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterward you will eat and drink"? Does he thank the servant because the servant was doing what was commanded? Of course not. So you also, when you have done all that was your duty, say, "We are unprofitable servants." What you are commanded, say, "We are unprofitable servants. We have only done what it was our duty to do." Young's literal translation of the Bible, which is awkward to read, but sometimes it's beautifully poignant. It actually translates that verse. "So also ye, when ye may have done all the things directed you, say, we are unprofitable servants, because that which we owed to do, that is what we have done." This is very interesting. And so this falls into each of us having our own callings within the parish. And that we need to look at those matters. But a very important part is the latter part of this. So, if you do good only to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. So we're to give, expecting nothing back, including thanks. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, give, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the unthankful and the evil. You will be inheriting children of the Most High. So this is our reward, is an eternal one. And I just want us to understand, I want everyone to understand, that God has called us to greater things. That as a parish, we have to turn away, and it's always tempting, but every church that's closed of any kind, studies have shown that they've closed due to me-centeredness rather than God-centeredness. And so that is what we ultimately vowed to do in 2016. It was no longer would the church be me-centered, but it would be completely God-centered. And then, that is when we get our reward. That is when we become children of the Most High. Our enemies, people who can't give back when we lend, think back in those days, back in those days, you had a lot of that, where people could not, even if they expected to, they wound up not being able to pay in return. And the Christians were expected to forgive the debt if they were legitimately destitute. And that did happen. And you know what? We might not have as much of that today with us, but sometimes people might be indebted to us. And brothers and sisters, we are in rough times where people say rough things to one another. They say things that are offensive, right? All people who are voting for Biden are apparently baby killers, according to some, and all people who are voting for Trump are Nazis who secretly are plotting to take down cities in their basements. So there's offensive things said every day. And so there is a debt that people will owe you. And maybe in your life, too, there's some debt that someone owes you, even if it's just an apology. First of all, did you ask for the apology? That's an important thing because people might not know if you offended them. Jesus tells us, if someone offends you, go tell them your problem between you and them. And hopefully they just didn't realize it. And they say, I am so sorry. I did not know I did that. You would not believe how easy it is to do that. Really easy. Including with your spouse sometimes. Sometimes things need said between spouses and one spouse is afraid to say to the other one, say it. Best friends, co-workers go years and years and years, and one's thinking another owes a debt. Again, an apology or something else. Ask for it. You'd be surprised how quickly you might get it. But if we're to not expect anything back, we're even to love our enemies not expecting anything back, sometimes we just have to let things go then. Right? Not expecting anything back, maybe including an apology. And that happens especially with our loved ones who might have offended us before they died, and they might have died owing us maybe an apology or owing us more. Guess what we have to do? We have to give our forgiveness, expecting nothing back. And I hate the saying, oh, don't forgive others for their sake, forgive for your sake. What? No, you give for their sake. That's what the Lord said. Forgive for their sake. And great will be your reward in heaven. May the Lord reward us on that day, and may we be worthy of it, doing these things that He has called us to do. Stand as inheriting children of the Most High, the kingdom which He has prepared for us from before the world began. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to